April 1942. The surrender of Bataan wasn't the end of the fight. It was the beginning of a living hell on Earth. 65 miles of scorching heat, no food, no water. Only the relentless march under a sun that burned with pure hatred. Survival was a crime. One stumble, one look of defiance, and the steel of a bayonet found its mark without mercy. 10,000 souls never reached the end. Their dignity was stripped away long before their last breath touched the dirt. The Bataan Death March. A grim reminder that war strips away human dignity much faster than it takes lives. The sun became a weapon. For 65 miles, water was a luxury, and mercy was non-existent. This was the beginning of the end. Fall behind, and you never get back up. The Imperial Guards ensured that death was the only rest allowed for the weary. Master Sergeant Elias Vance watched his brothers vanish into the dust. Every step was a brutal battle against his own collapsing lungs and a fading soul. Thousands perished, not just from bullets or bayonets, but from the slow, agonizing erosion of the human spirit in the heat of Bataan. In the hell of Bataan, we learned the cruelest truth of all. War strips away human dignity faster than it takes lives. Under the blistering Philippine sun, every step was a desperate battle against gravity and the encroaching shadow of death. Mercy was a foreign concept here. A moment's hesitation or a collapse was met with the cold, unforgiving steel of a bayonet. Thirst became a madness. Men were willing to risk a bullet for just a single sip of fly-ridden, stagnant water from a roadside ditch. Those who could no longer walk were simply erased. The roadside was quickly transforming into a massive graveyard without a single cross. In the end, it wasn't just lives being lost. This march was stripping away the very essence of human dignity faster than any bullet ever could. This was not a march. It was a journey into the darkest depths of human cruelty, where every step was a battle against the abyss. Starvation and thirst became weapons of war. Men were forced to march under a merciless sun, their tongues turning to leather. Those who collapsed were executed on the spot. Torture was the routine. Mercy was a bullet they couldn't afford. War strips away human dignity faster than it takes lives. Here in the dust of Bataan, humanity was discarded like refuse. 60 miles of agony. Thousands perished, leaving behind a trail of broken bodies that would haunt history as one of Asia's most horrific war crimes. Death was not a destination. It was a constant companion on every agonizing mile of the Bataan Peninsula. Over 75,000 men, stripped of food, water, and hope, were forced into a 65-mile trek of pure, unadulterated hell. To stop was to die. To ask for water was a death sentence. Compassion had been executed at the starting line. The roadside became a graveyard. Those who stumbled were bayoneted, shot, or simply buried alive where they fell. This wasn't just a march. It was an industrial-scale erasure of human dignity, one heartbeat at a time. This wasn't just a march. It was an organized descent into hell where every step was a battle against extinction. Days passed without a drop of water. Thirst became a physical weight, heavier than the rifles they once carried. Under the blistering sun treatment, they were forced to sit for hours without shade. Here, dignity evaporated faster than their sweat. If you fell, you died. The Japanese guards showed no mercy, using bayonets to prune the weak from the line. In the dust of Bataan, war proved it could strip away the human soul long before it claimed the body. 100 kilometers of hell, no food, no water, only the scorching sun and the bayonets of the captors. Thousands of American and Philippine soldiers forced into a death march that would stain history forever. To stumble was a death sentence. To ask for water was an invitation for a bullet. Dysentery and malaria ravaged their bodies. but it was the systematic cruelty that broke their spirits. In the jungles of Bataan, dignity died long before the heart stopped beating. This was the cost of war, 10 days of hell, 65 miles of pure, unadulterated agony. This was the Bataan Death March. Water was a luxury paid for in blood. One step out of line meant the bayonet's cold, lethal kiss. If you fell, you stayed. The roadside became a mass graveyard of nameless heroes who could walk no more. They didn't just take our freedom or our food, they stripped us of our very souls, 1 mile at a time. Because in the end, war strips away human dignity faster than it takes lives. Never forget Bataan. The Bataan Death March was not just a journey, it was a descent into a living hell where the sun was a furnace and hope was a crime. With no food and barely a drop of water, the body begins to consume itself, but the spirit breaks first. Those who stumbled were met with the steel of a bayonet. To fall was not just a failure, it was a death sentence. Over 60 miles of agony, where every step was a gamble with fate, and the stench of death became the only air they breathed. War strips away human dignity faster than lives, leaving only the raw, brutal instinct to survive 1 more minute. This wasn't just a march. It was a slow-motion execution of 10,000 souls. Starvation hollowed their bodies, but it was the relentless heat that broke their spirits. Any hesitation was met with the cold steel of a bayonet or the crushing blow of a rifle butt. The roads of Bataan became a graveyard stretching for 65 miles of absolute agony, because in the hell of 1942, war stripped away human dignity faster than it took their lives. They didn't just walk to their deaths, they were marched through a living hell where survival was the only sin. Under a blistering Philippine sun, 65 miles felt like an eternity of agony, where every step was a battle against extinction. One stumble meant a bayonet to the back. In this march, there was no mercy for the weak. Only the cold steel of the conqueror. Starvation and thirst became their masters. They were stripped of their names, their strength, and finally, their dignity. Thousands perished in the dust, leaving a trail of broken spirits across Bataan. War strips away human dignity faster than lives. The march became a conveyor belt of death, where a single stumble was a death sentence written in the Philippine mud. Stomachs shriveled into knots. Water was a luxury. Hope was a ghost haunting the exhausted minds of the survivors. Behind the columns, the bayonets sang a song of absolute cruelty for anyone too weak to keep pace with the madness. The roadside was paved with the bodies of the forgotten, stripped of their names, their strength, and their human dignity. In the tropical heat of Bataan, humanity didn't just die, it was methodically erased, proving war strips away dignity faster than lives. 80 miles of living hell where the only reward for stopping was a bullet to the head. No food, no water, just the scorching sun and the relentless cruelty of the Imperial Guards. Thousands perished along this road of death, their dignity stripped away before their breath even left their lungs. Mercy was a foreign concept here. Survival was the only law left in the suffocating heat of Bataan. The Bataan Death March, a testament that war destroys more than just lives. It attempts to kill the very soul of humanity. 100 kilometers of hell, no food, no water, only the relentless rhythm of death under the Philippine sun. Those who stumbled didn't just fall, they were executed. A bayonet for a stumble, a bullet for a plea. Jack Miller, once a strong man, is now a skeleton wrapped in tattered cloth, his humanity fading with every agonizing step. The roadside became a cemetery without graves. Thousands of American and Filipino souls surrendered to the dust. In the Bataan Death March, war didn't just take their lives, it stripped away their very dignity before the end. 80 miles of pure hell. For the men of Bataan, death wasn't the enemy. It was the mercy they were denied. Starved, beaten, and scorched by the Philippine sun, they marched toward a fate worse than the battlefield. Any sign of weakness was a death sentence. To stop walking was to stop living. 10,000 souls never reached the end. The road to Camp O'Donnell was paved with the bodies of those who could not take another step. Because in the Bataan Death March, war didn't just take their lives, it stripped away their very humanity. 10,000 ghosts walking toward their graves. This wasn't a march. It was a conveyor belt of death. Men were denied water for days, forced to stare at artesian wells they were never allowed to touch. Under the blistering sun, those who collapsed were either buried alive or decapitated where they fell. In the mud of Bataan, dignity was the first thing to die, long before the heart stopped beating. The Bataan Death March, a scar on history proving war doesn't just take lives, it hollows out the soul. 80 miles of pure, unadulterated hell. The Bataan Death March wasn't just a walk, it was a slaughterhouse on the move. Beneath the blistering sun, 75,000 men were stripped of their food, their water, and their humanity. To the guards, they weren't men anymore. They were subhuman targets for bayonets and cruelty. If you fell, you died. Bodies lined the roads of Bataan like discarded refuse, left to rot in the tropical heat. In the end, Bataan proved a terrifying truth. War doesn't just take your life, it strips away your soul long before your last breath, 80 miles of pure hell. This wasn't just a march, it was a slow-motion massacre, no food, no water. Only the scorching sun and the relentless cruelty of captors who saw them as less than human. Fall behind, and you die. Speak up, and you die. Sometimes they killed just for the sport of it. 10,000 souls never reached the end. Their dignity was stripped away long before their breath left them. The Bataan Death March. A grim reminder that war consumes the soul faster than the body. A stain on history that never fades.